10 seconds. All right, you guys should be good. Go ahead.
All right. Well, hello everyone. We have a lot of exciting updates. We have some especially exciting dev updates, which Medha will be talking through in a little bit. And before then, we need to just say that the Pyrofex deal has been closed. We're in the process of sending the ROPs and other investments over to Pyrofex, and looking forward to. Yes, excellent feedback. So we need to. So we'll be expecting to.
Greg, you muted yourself.
Sorry, no, I muted him. I was trying to mute everyone else in the room. Greg, 1 second. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Am I unmuted?
Yeah, you're good. Everyone, keep your mics muted if you're not talking. It's really difficult. There's only one admin, me. So if I have to unmute 5 people, it's pretty difficult because there's more people joining the room. So Greg, continue, please.
Okay, cool. So anyway, so I'm just very, very excited to have this deal closed, and we're moving rapidly. Already, Pyrofex is helping with the logistics on the governance conference. Likewise, so we will be so the community can have any sort of additional scrutiny on the deal. We'll make sure that all the agreements documents are available for the community up in GitHub. I've asked Nash to prepare documents that he feels comfortable with, and we'll get those up into GitHub. We'll also be sharing those because it looks like I don't want to take the wind out of any sails, but it looks like we're soon to be seeing the first deal with Venture close. Peter Harris and Ventures have reached an accord, it appears, and so they just need the shape of that deal, the deal that we did with Pyrofex, as a kind of template for how the Resonate deal gets shaped out. So I'll also be sharing that, and this is kind of what we're looking for, is a sort of cookie cutter to be able to stamp out these all throughout the ecosystem. We also have some very exciting news from Ventures, and they'll be coming to the governance forum to talk about that. So I'm really excited about that opportunity, and I think the community will be excited as well. So
I lost
Brandon.
Greg.
Still here? You guys see me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
I hear him.
I hear him too.
Okay, I'll drop and come back.
Okay, cool. So, and now on to governance forum stuff. I want to mention that we have confirmation from H3 Uni. So there'll be 2 H3 Uni representatives with boots on the ground in the governance forum. And we will also have a Zoom presentation from Tony Hodgson himself with a Q&A session. So that's cemented. We have Mukara. Her proposal has been approved. We also have a group that will be leading games. I know that Jim really liked that in the last governance forum that we did. So we'll be having a group that does that. And this is a part of a much longer term effort that I've been engaged in. I worked with Luke Holman as far back as 2007, 2008 timeframe on the serious games, serious play movement. And so we're now in the we're now starting to get to the point where the serious games and serious play, and it's the means by which it gives us access to higher collective intelligence is something I want to talk about a lot in the governance forum. And in fact, one of the things I just want to mention is that I will be presenting the RChain community with a lot of technologies that might be challenging for people. These are social and other kinds of technologies that, in my experience, give us access to sort of higher collective functionality. So it should be fun for all to engage and see these sort of and test for yourself these different technologies for achieving some higher collective functionality. Yes, rhythm is very important. And this, I mean, if you go study the African cultures, it is very important, absolutely. So let's see. I had hoped that Imogen Heap would be able to join the governance forum. She has a prior commitment. She is doing the music for the Harry Potter Cursed Child play that's debuting in London, and she's still sort of getting all of her ducks in the row for that, so she can't quite make it to come out to the governance forum. But we had a very nice exchange over the weekend, and she is fully committed to building out her mycelial project on RChain. And to the best of my knowledge, we'll be announcing that as a part of her workshop on the 26th. So in just a few days, this Friday, she'll be announcing that commitment to the workshop attendees. So this is very, very exciting. So things are really moving along at a great pace with respect to that. So speaking of which, let's talk a little bit about the technology that's supporting all this activity. Medha, are you on board here?
I am.
Awesome. You want to give us an update?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So probably the biggest update to give is on the SDK 0.1. We discovered some issues with the compiler. So what we were doing is we were testing the tutorial that goes with the compiler and the SDK release. And as a result of that testing, we fleshed out several issues with the compiler. And the compiler team is wanting to put out a high quality release. Even though it is an alpha release, we still want it to be of high quality and of good value to the community and to the developers who want to attract to rolling. So we felt it prudent to delay the release. We are anticipating a 1 to 2 week delay. We're still analyzing and triaging those tickets. They were just filed yesterday. This is kind of hot off the presses. I am going to be pushing an update on when the SDK release will be ready as soon as I have confirmation from the team. So that's probably the biggest update. It's good. This is how work happens. That's what Greg said. You know, this is par for the course. It's to be expected. You know, the upshot is that we found the issues before we released it, and the community didn't submit those to us. I'm gratified by that, and I look forward to putting out a high quality release for the broader development community. So that's probably the biggest update there. We're also working on the developer.rchain.coop website. There's some very nice work that's happening there as well, and we're excited about launching that. We hope to offer a very nice forum for FAQs. So an FAQ and a forum. We find that we're fielding a lot of technical questions, and we want to put a place where people can go and just get those answers. So we'll be looking to some of the community members as well for moderators for those for the technical questions as well. So if you're interested, shoot me a DM on Discord if you're interested in moderating a channel on the forum. Let's see, what else can I talk about? Compiler team, we do have a high-level compiler roadmap ready. I will share a high-level dependency graph, which is a little bit more fleshed out than what some of you may have seen on the wiki at the end of my update. We had some great discussions around the tuple space and storage, and we have some more detailed project planning discussions happening this week prior to sprint exit. We exit on Friday and we'll be entering our next set of sprints on Monday. So we're doing a lot of planning around the next sprint, as well as buttoning up the work in this sprint. We have a plan to start implementing Casper in RBL. This is going to help us decouple from the compiler roadmap. We anticipate that the compiler team is going to need until about June, July-ish to get their work done. That's the first date you've heard me throw out. But what we don't want to do is wait for Casper testing until the compiler is done. So we want to decouple those dependencies. And Michael Birch has started doing some of his Casper work in RBL. So he's working on the algorithm, he's ramping up on RBL, and his intention is to deliver a first straw of Casper in RBL that we can test independently of the compiler. That will get us more testing and performance tuning, and just try to pull those dates in as much as we can so we have plenty of time to hit the date for Mercury. We have a first draft communications API that's been sent to the development team for internal review. And we're doing a lot of work on fleshing out how node storage and virtual machine come together. Henry Till, I don't know if he's on the call. That was a miss on my part if he's not on the call. Has joined the team as of Monday.
I'm here.
And we're very excited to have him on board.
Hello, everybody.
There you are. Welcome
Hey,
aboard.
Henry. Great to have you on board.
Henry will be heading up the storage effort. We have done our packaging for the SDK release. So once we have a fresh compiler to drop in there, we should be good to go. A lot of work done around that. And good progress made on the greenery and path to regex library ports on Node. So excellent work there. And I can quickly share my screen and give you guys a glimpse of the draft roadmap that I've been working on. Okay, so what you're looking at is really a dependency graph. I've tried to provide some color so you can see the different swim lanes there. Is my screen visible? We're good?
Yeah,
Yep.
you're good.
Excellent, okay. So the top, you'll see the virtual machine work. We're currently in the transition milestone, and that is to get all the opcodes implemented in Scala. After we complete transition milestone, we'll go into RBL, which is the RBL compiler pipeline. This milestone for RBL has to be done before we can run any RBL code. Now, our hope is that we'll be able to run some RBL code in advance of that, but we're going to try to prioritize that so we can demonstrate as much progress as we can and running simple compiled rolling contracts if possible, but we're still untangling all those dependencies. I'm going with the assumption that we won't be able to run RBL until it's done. Parallel to that is primitives. We've got some great work that the community developers have given us on primitives. So I've parallelized that. I anticipate that work will happen in tandem with what the core team is working on transition and RBL. And we've got a small milestone here for cryptographic primitives as well. So that will need to be implemented as well as in the VM. We may or may not implement a foreign function interface. We have an open decision on the team as to whether we're going to do that. So that is a question we should get fleshed out this week. The Node swim lane. So we're going to create a Node API. I hope to deliver a first release of the Node API here. That's the next evolution of Node. And that will allow us to interface with the comms library, maybe start and stop the virtual machine. I don't know if I'll be able to integrate the VM or not. If I can, I will. But we still have some questions on how the virtual machine integration is going to happen. But the goal is to start integrating the VM very, very early on and iteratively improve the VM as the VM gets more and more features. So figure out how we're going to integrate it early on, and then add more and more as we go along the way. And here you'll see we're going to add more and more features to the Node API, right? So we can do interesting things like look at node metrics, right? So if you want to see how the network is performing, those types of higher level applications will leverage these node APIs and node metrics that'll be exposed by the API. Simple swim lane here for storage. Obviously, Henry just joined us on Monday, so he'll be working on that roadmap, and expect more information to pop in there later on. Testing. So we have to talk a little bit about testing. There's loads and loads of testing that's going to be happening. So I'm not going to dive into this in detail. You can read that for yourself, but we've got a swim lane for testing. Consensus, as I indicated, our goal is to implement in RBL and then go into full-fledged implementation and testing. You'll see here we've got some stress testing for Node, but then up here we've got rollback and consensus testing. So as soon as we've got Casper, we're going to do a bunch of testing with the nodes with Casper and seeing how we can snapshot VM state, roll back, and performance tune Casper, et cetera, et cetera. So I expect there's a good amount of testing that needs to happen once we have Casper in test, right? Compiler, it's fairly fleshed out roadmap in terms of what we need to do with compiler. Lots and lots of work here. As I indicated, July-ish timeframe is when we will expect compiler to drop. Cost. So this is how we're going to figure out what contract execution will cost. So our approach is going to be, the first thing we're going to do is implement bounding. So the ability to bound the execution of a contract. So if we arbitrarily assume that each opcode costs a unit of 1, let's bound that first and foremost. Then we can figure out how much each opcode is going to cost to run. Once we have that and we have a more complete system, we will implement multi-threaded costing during a period where we'll be performance tuning and fine tuning how the entire system as it's coming together, right? So we've got multi-threaded costing at the very end, where we're going to be doing a lot of our performance tuning and checks and what I call spit and polish on the release. And then of course we've got testnet infrastructure, right? So we theoretically have a testnet right now. We've got our one node. We did a performance test of that, earlier in January with the community. We had up to 25 nodes that we did a little kind of our quote unquote testnet testing. We're going to be doing some security and pen testing that is going to be separate and done through some nodes that we'll provision in a separate internal testnet. And then we're going to start talking about provisioning some testnet infrastructure and then start deploying some of these nodes that you've seen up above here as these milestones kind of drop in and we start getting some node functionality. We're going to start deploying those nodes to a testnet and then start pushing that forward, right? Our goal is to develop scripts and processes so that we are continuously deploying, right? So when we have a new version of Node or a new version of the VM, you're going to see a new flavor of Node, right? When we have a new version of the compiler, you're going to see a new flavor of the SDK. And all of this is going to happen automatically. So we'll see many, many versions of the SDK and many, many versions of Node that'll be delivered at the end of every sprint or at every month, right? So at a minimum, I want that done every month. Did my microphone go dead? Can everybody hear me?
No. Yes.
No, you're all fine.
Okay, very good. And so our goal is at a minimum to try to deliver something every month, if possible. So that's my update. I will take some questions.
Medha, I had a question about opcode pricing. So
Yes.
there was a couple, maybe one or two instances, at least in the Ethereum network, where there was a bit of a denial of service because of inefficient pricing for opcodes. So when you say set the price to 1 and then run some tests, does that mean run some tests to figure out how much computation it actually costs and then try to match the price per the hardness of the computation?
So for implementing cost bounding, during that time, we will arbitrarily set a cost for the opcodes because the opcodes won't even be ready, right? So this is me, again, trying to decouple everything. So I want Joe to be able to go ahead and implement some kind of cost bounding, but he won't have opcodes necessarily complete in the VM. So for his purpose, he's going to set an arbitrary price. Once the opcodes are ready, we're going to have to go through an exercise of determining how much each of the opcodes cost.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
And will those generally be fixed like they are in Ethereum, or would they be somewhat dynamic as the network evolves?
That's a really great question for Joe. Might I suggest that you drop that in the developer channel and ask him? If nothing else, you can start thinking about it. Awesome, thank you.
So Meta, thank you so much. That was really excellent. I wanted to mention a couple of other things that are related to that. The PyroFX team did a great job of kind of updating and cleaning up the C++ VM for release, so people can write and test RBL code right now on that level of the stack. I asked Nash and the team to give an estimate on what it would take to do. The VM is still kind of a little bit hampered because it was written long enough ago that it's for a 32-bit architecture, not a 64-bit architecture. So I've asked them to take a look at what it would take to upgrade it to a 64-bit architecture. And this is to have a little bit in our back pocket if it turns out that the Scala VM is not as performant as we would like it to be. Then we would have, ultimately, I mean, the long-term goal, as Mike and I have talked about quite a bit, is to bootstrap. So we want to get to a row VM and go straight out to native code. But before that, you know, that's gonna take a bit of time, right? That's a fairly significant piece of engineering. So before that, we want to be able to have something that in our back pocket in case we need some headroom on the VM side. And so one step in that direction is to get the C++ version of the VM up to, you know, sort of modern architectures standards in terms of the memory we can address. So we're taking that step, and then so we're just going to keep that as a you know, as a fallback position, just in case the Scala is too much of an overhead as we start to scale up. So it gives a little bit more runway before we you know, hit the ground running with a bootstrapped implementation. So that's one piece that's kind of not on this mainline development that I want people to be aware of. Additionally, with respect to testnet, one of the reasons, so so Lily and Chris Kirkwood Watts and I have all, and Christian, we've all booked our travel off to Perm, Russia. So we'll be meeting with the Lika team there, and we'll be having some technical talks with their engineers in preparation to getting our node software into their hands. And this is a part of our a multifold plan. So just, I know I've said this a couple of times on these Hangouts, but I just want to keep reiterating this so that the community understands the strategic plan. So our aim is to get the node software into the hands of various exchanges. And this is because the exchanges are one of the most rigorous test beds for this kind of code. If you want to know how Ethereum really performs, go talk to Bill Shihara of Bittrex, or Sergey for Perm, for Lika, and then you'll get a more serious handle on the quality of the software that's running the existing crypto infrastructure. So what we want to do is to avail ourselves very early of the sort of the load that comes through the exchanges, even before we go live. So we're kind of smoothing the runway, making sure the engineers know us, we know the engineers, and you know, if they ever encounter any problems, they know who to go to make sure that they can get any issues resolved as quickly as possible, and that they're on the train for the releases. Each time we hit even a minor release, we want them to be able to exercise the code in their in their testing framework. The other side of this is that we want to be able to facilitate the Rev for Rock exchange, and so the hope is that we can have Lika and and Bittrex and others on board so that the co-op doesn't have to do the whole exchange ourselves, but rather that'll be the swap of the rev for rock. So first we get the software tested in their test frameworks. Then the software goes live with nodes running in the exchanges. Then we do the rev for rock swap. And that's facilitated by some of the major exchanges. So that's kind of another piece of the roadmap, and you can see how it layers on top of the roadmap that Medha just so eloquently sketched out for us. So let me take a step back and see if there are any questions either about what Medha said or how this other piece fits into the picture.
So Greg, for these nodes that the exchanges are hopefully going to run, is it possible that they could use RChain for interoperability purposes, so that they could use almost like infrastructure for other business that they have?
Nothing escapes you, does it, Kenny? That's exactly right. That's one of the hopes and one of the aims. Nash and I were chatting the other day, and he was pushing his metaphor of the namespaces thing as a mount and unmount. So which is very much about interoperability. So this is exactly the kind of interoperability that we want to foster, and that's what namespaces do. And you've really nailed it, right? Well, that's the first point of integration with other chains, is at the exchanges. And so yes, this is very much on the roadmap.
One last question, and this is a bit, I don't know if this means anything or not, but for the initial VM, going from a 32 to 64 bit, what is the planned, what is the right term, word size or for the VM? Or is that even applicable to this particular VM?
Well, I mean, this is written just the way if you think about the CLR or any of these others, you end up having to lay out a certain amount of memory for allocating any objects, and then you have to have a little bit of an overhead for dispatching on those objects. So that's really what this is all about. Now, if you're looking about future-proofing this against, downstream architectures, I don't think we have to worry about that too much more. Hopefully, I'm aiming it in the right direction for your question. Maybe I'm not. What's the intent behind your question?
Yeah, that's basically it. It's I mean, because Ethereum uses 256 bits, and everybody thinks, oh, that is a huge number. We're never going to have a problem with that. And we thought the same thing with IP addresses, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. So if you're looking at future proofing, I'm only looking at this as future proofing for the next 3 years, and then by that point we will have done the row bootstrap. And once we've done the row bootstrap, the Scala, I mean the Rosette VM gets kicked to the sidelines. Yeah. Cool. So let's see. We have
2 to the 256 is an excruciatingly large number. 2 to the 256 nanoseconds is 10 to the 60th years.
Good point.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, just from our point of view, this bit of the future proofing is not to get us out into the 20-year time horizon. That's what the bootstrap is for.
Greg,
so
when we talked about the cross-chain interoperability the other day, you mentioned that even for RChain itself, over time, that heterogeneity will become an issue and that there needs to be a comprehension of that. So is there a concept of either versioning or time linked to everything in such a way that we could do that either over time heterogeneity or cross-chain heterogeneity, that it can be handled?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. This is very much a part of the whole, and that's another reason why namespaces make versioning so much easier. Yes. Great question. Thank you for that. Okay, so we have lots of other updates. So one thing that I'm very excited about, I think over the last few times I've mentioned that RChain is going to start a research group. And the research group is going to be focused on 4 areas. The first and most important area is making sure that we're ahead of scoping on features for the next releases. So we don't want to, get to Mercury and, we have no idea what's going into Venus. Right, so the research group is looking 2 releases out. So there's a group that's deciding what's in and what's out for Venus, and there's a group that's doing more exploratory work for Earth and kinds of things. So that's a part of what the research group does. Another part of what the research group does is to to give some focus to the general consensus work that's going on. So Vlad has sketched out a very nice framework for Casper that, just as an example, Michael Birch took it on to do a correct by construction Casper version of the byte ball consensus algorithm. And it took him, about a week to get this done. So this is very promising, right? It says that we're sort of on to a good structure and a good framework for consensus, but there's still a lot of questions that remain. And I've talked about those, so I won't go into them here. But so there's a sub area of research that will be on consensus with a special focus on future-proofing the consensus as relates to quantum compute and other kinds of developments that will be coming down the pipe. And then another one is expanding and fleshing out the role of ladle. We've talked about some of the value of ladle, but really this is in many ways one of the most important features of RChain is the ladle algorithm. And it's not just because scale isn't only about how many bits you're pushing across how many transactions you're pushing across the network in how many seconds. Scale also has to do with, are those the right transactions? Are the transactions correct? And are the contracts that are processing those transactions correct? So Ladle helps us a lot with that and that aspect of scaling, but it also helps us with many other things. For example, it helps us with discovery. So we can use Ladle to do a query against this giant database of contracts that will be happening as a result of all these applications, like Mycelia or Resonate or CryptoFX or any of these other applications that are going to be built on the RChain platform. That's going to generate thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of contracts, and so there's going to be this giant blockchain-based GitHub there, and you want to be able to search that GitHub, but not the way we search GitHub today, which is largely social searching. You want to be able to search on the basis of what code does and how it's structured, and Ladle gives us the mechanism to do that. So the research group, so there'll be a research area within RChain research that looks at Ladle. And then finally, there's a research group that will be working on AI and how that interfaces with the blockchain. So obviously, in order to get this kicked off, we're going to need someone to head that effort up. And I'm pleased to announce that Mike Stay has accepted the role of director of research at RChain. So we're really excited that Mike will be able to kick that off, and that won't. So people understand the time frame here. This will not impact Mercury at all. So RChain research doesn't get kicked off until after Mercury is released. Although there will be some early work going on to make sure that the Venus release is well scoped out by the time we get to Mercury. So we're very, very excited about that. And I just I think this is the sign of a healthy growth pattern for us. So that's another one of the updates. And then Lawrence, I'm sure you have some updates to share with us, and I'm sure Greg Heuss also has some updates. So
always have lots and lots of good stuff. Appreciate it. I was in San Francisco this week, or still am, for the meetup tonight. We have over 80 people signed up here at Runway, which is where I am right now. So I'm trying to keep my voice down so I'm not disturbing everybody else. The response and the number of emails and questions that I've gotten already has been phenomenal. Excuse me, phenomenal. Everybody's really excited. On the heels of that, the team in London is priming us for our first meetup there, and we'll schedule that in the next 2 months. I met with a group of 30 investors on Monday from China, courtesy of one of our other partners. And they have asked to take a pretty significant stake. And I wish I could talk about it. And it's hard to tease, do these sort of vague bookings, but I do want to talk that we are getting them. If people have questions, they can certainly message me privately. So I'll keep it really brief today because we've got just a tremendous amount of good stuff. Oh, and go to YouTube, upvote the video that interview Nash Foster and I did with Blockchain Brad, spread it far and wide because we went pretty deep on a lot of the technology, the business strategy for holdings and how we're going to build the ecosystem. Brad was a great interviewer, and we'll be looking to get more people interviewed. And tonight we are going to have, sorry, I'm out of order again, as part of our a meetup. Medha, are you still on for tonight?
Yes, I'm on for tonight.
Awesome. So we're going to have Medha live and in living color, presenting to the San Francisco meetup community, and talk a little bit about what's coming out in terms of roadmap and maybe show some of the websites. So I think that's going to be an extra treat for everybody. All right, thanks.
So Greg Heuss, do you have any updates you want to share with the community?
Sure, I can share a few of them. Yeah, as you mentioned, we're getting very close with Peter and Resonate, so I've been super excited about that, especially being a music guy that I am. That one's really exciting and probably too much fun for me, so I'll get a little more serious and onto other things as well. But that one's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll have some great announcements with that. We're super excited about the governance forum. I've been working with Kevin on that to figure out, what kind of an announcements we can make. And I wish I could share more with the group for right now, but I will certainly have more information on that as that gets closer. And really excited to meet everybody in Seattle and introduce the team at Ventures and sort of launch what we're doing. We have been in talks with 2 or 3 other groups so far. I think I may have touched a little bit on those guys last call. One is in the gaming space, and one is in the energy space, and one is in the commerce space, so as well as the music side. So we've been really busy all the while trying to figure out a name for our group, office space, everything else. So everything you can imagine of getting started, it's sort of been all thrown at us. But we're super, super excited. So we're getting really, really close. And yeah, that's my update right now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much
for
that. Sorry. So I have a couple of other things to chat about, but before I do that, I want to see, Lisa, did you want to give any updates, or do you want to leave that for another time?
I'll leave it for another time, Greg.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds
Okay.
good. So just so people know, we have a board meeting scheduled for tomorrow. We'll be going over, as an example, getting the board approval to file for the 501c12 status, which will help out a lot with our taxes. And let's see, I can't remember the other agenda items, so I'll have to pull those up. But just so the community knows, the board is meeting tomorrow, and let's see, I've only received about 6 requests from the community for travel support. So just again, I want to just urge, if people want to need some travel assistance from the co-op to come to the governance forum, please email rchain.requests@gmail.com, and we will be processing those in the next week or so to make sure that everyone who needs travel assistance, their request has been reviewed and most likely supported. So please don't delay on that if you need travel support to come to the governance forum. Okay, so I want to throw out a crazy idea that occurred to me this past week. RChain co-op has to get office spaces. It's just too it's too much pressure on my household to be having meetings here, and the coffee shops are no longer the best place given the total number of meetings that we have. So so we have to get office spaces, and I started doing some numbers, and I noticed that we would save a pile if we bought a building instead of renting one. So I just want to throw that out there and get some feedback from the community, as to how people think about this. Just spitball. Don't.
Hey, Greg.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. I mean, there's buying and there's renting a building, but I've actually looked at, the idea around a shared workspace type building, and I've got a very good partner that I can introduce you to. That's one of the top 2 property management companies, and they'll do all the research for us for free. So we can talk about that offline, but I'd love to hear what other people think, because overall, it's a really interesting idea. And I think there's a lot of synergies and benefits.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Anyone else have any input or feedback or thoughts?
I think buying a piece of real estate is a good idea. It's a way of us owning ourselves in another way, and it's a good, generally a very good investment in the long term, and we're going to be around for the long term. So I'm in favor.
So Greg, this is Greg Heuss. On that note, yeah, let's talk offline. I think maybe David has put a bug in your ear as well. So we're very close to something like that. So let's talk about that and continue that conversation, because let's take that offline and talk about it. We're real close to doing something, just what you're talking about.
Oh, that's so interesting, because I didn't talk to David about this.
You didn't?
No.
I just figured you were reading his mind, because we were ready to talk to you at the end of this week about exactly that. So no, let's continue that conversation. I think it's a brilliant idea. Makes all the sense in the world. One of the things we've talked about with ventures is we want to create a space where everybody can come into. I would love to, and I don't think there's any reason we can't make Seattle and turn it into this blockchain central area, if not for the Northwest, for the country. Why not us? Why can't we do that here? And why can't we lead that? So we're all in on that from the venture side, very much so.
Good.
Okay.
Medha, thank you. I mean, I mean, I'm very excited about the synergistic possibilities, you know, with the co-location for ventures and co-op, at least for some stuff. I think that would be really cool. So yeah, let's definitely have this conversation offline.
Great, great.
And Meta, you were putting some stuff in the chat. Did you want to say some more? Because I couldn't quite parse what you wrote in the chat.
Oh no, I was just saying that Seattle proper is really, really expensive, and then travel expenses and hotels and availability and all that. So that's my 2 cents on Seattle proper. Like the
yeah. You're absolutely right. I'm actually looking at West Seattle because it's considerably cheaper and not so much travel for some of us.
No other reason than
none at all for you, Greg.
But anyway, but obviously we'll do our due diligence and look at the numbers and I'll make sure that we get lots of feedback from the community and make sure that the board is involved and get feedback from them. Let's see, anything else? I know. So Tamara Rogers. So this is the first time I've seen you at the in the community hangout. What brought you here?
So I was here last week, actually, but didn't chime in. Can you guys hear me right now?
Yeah, sorry if I didn't see you last week. My apologies.
It's all right. I jumped in a bit late. Lawrence has brought me on board. I'm local here in Seattle, which is why I was ixnaying the Seattle Bridge proposition. I've been brought in to pick up some of the slack on the legal work, and we'll see where it goes from there. Right now, reviewing some contracts and getting a few things done on the to-do list.
Awesome. Great. Good to have you on board. Really appreciate it. Okay, so I think we've covered all the updates I wanted to cover. Boy, that is a great sound in the background. Is that some kids? Okay, so is there anything else people want to chat about before we yield this one back to the community?
Yes, I just wanted to give one quick update from the members and activists group. So I recently started about 2 weeks ago to join the members conversation. I'm very excited to be here, and I have been talking to HJ and Kit Blake, who are about to jump into a meetup in The Hague as well. So that's very exciting. And we've just been chatting about the forum, the governance forum that's coming up, as well as we want to look at some challenges and how we can potentially fix them. So examples of that would be acknowledging people who deliver solutions and quality work to the platform, but also, a sort of reporting mechanism to get the word out of what the activists are doing. We're based all across the world, so connecting with each other and finding a way to do that efficiently as well. So that's just a quick update. I might be doing more of these updates every week as we move along. And if there's anything that anyone in the group would like us to discuss or find a solution to, we'd be more than happy to hear about that as well.
Fantastic. So remind me your name?
Chantal.
Chantal. Okay, great. And yeah. Chantal, you're a member of the co-op, yes?
No, not yet.
Okay, please become a member.
All right.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else from anyone else on the Hangout? Nash, did you want to say anything about the Pyrofix deal? Anything at all?
Just thanks for making it happen. We're really privileged to be a part of this.
Likewise. We're so lucky to be able to work with the Pyrofix team. It's a very, very, very gratifying work experience. Okay, I am really happy to yield back 10 minutes. Going once, going twice. All right, silence is golden. We get 10 minutes back to get to work. Nash, can we just stay in this room and you and Henry and I can chat for a few minutes, and then Rudy right after Nash and Henry and I chat, then you and I can jump on the call.
Should I just call you by regular phone after that, Greg?
Yeah, or no, you can join me on Zoom. So actually, this is Christian's room. I forgot this is Christian's room. So I'm going to jump over to my Zoom room. And so Nash and Henry, if you can join me over there, I think you guys have my Zoom room.
Yep, can do that. All right.
Hey, Greg.
See you there.
Okay. All right, see you there. And then that'll only be about 10 or 15 minutes, Rudy, and we'll see you there.
Okay.
At about, yeah. Okay. So
all right.
Sounds good. Ciao.